Hello students, welcome to KENE'S Educare. Today in the session of class 7th history, we will read and learn about lesson number 6, towns, traders and the craftspersons. Okay, we will read this chapter in two parts and today we will start with part 1. In this part, we will read and learn about the introduction of the chapter Town Traders and Craftsperson. That means during the 8th to the 18th century, 8th to 18th century period, we'll read that part of the history, that how towns emerged, how trade emerged, how craft led the region. Then we will read about some administrative centers. We will read about some temple towns and pilgrimage centers. And then we will read the network of small towns. कैसे small town ने network बना के they developed themselves into cities. Then we will read the taxes imposed on the market by the government. We will read about some big as well as some small traders. And we will read about a great trading center, Kabul. Then we will read the crafts in town. Okay, so let's get started with the chapter. Okay, now let's read the introduction of the chapter. What would a traveler visiting a medieval town expect to find? अगर कोई medieval town में घूम रहा है, then उसे क्या मिलेगा? But it will depend on what kind of a town it was. It will depend कि वो town था कैसा, right? Whether it was a temple town, whether it was an administrative center, whether it is a commercial town or a port town, to name just some possibility, right? Now you will say, ma'am, what is this temple town, administrative town, commercial town, port town? I will tell you everything. Don't worry. Okay. By the name, for now, by the name, you can understand that temple town wo hoga where there is a huge temple complex in the town, right? Administrative center wo ek place hoga where all the king, court, nobles stay and all the administration takes place of the country and the region, right? Commercial town will be that town where there is a flourished market, correct? And port town will be that town where port is there and trade takes place with the sea route. By name, you can understand this for now. In fact, many towns combine several functions. Medieval time में कुछ ऐसे भी towns थे. In fact, even in today, modern world also, we have so many towns having several functions. Few towns were administrative centers also, and at the same time, they were temple towns also, as well as there were centers of commercial activities and craft production also. So there was a time where each town had separate function to perform, but sometimes there was a town having a synthesis of all, having features of all the types of towns. Here is a map given of some important centers of trade and artisanal production in Central and South India. This is the map. Okay, these are all the towns important for the trade and artisanal production. And this period talks about 8 to 18th century all over. 8 to 18th century all over. Okay. Now let me explain you what are administrative centers, pilgrimage centers and commercial centers and so forth. Okay. So talking about administrative centers, you read about the Chola dynasty in chapter 2. Do you remember? और उसमें हम लोगों ने place पढ़ी थी Thanjavur, which was the capital city of Cholas. So let's travel in our imagination to Thanjavur. अपने दिमाग में एक imagination का ऐसे cloud बनाओ and think that you're going to Thanjavur. Just think. And you have to think Thanjavur in a way that it was 1,000 years ago. सोचो कि 1000 साल पहले Thanjavur कैसा दिखता होगा. The perennial river Kaveri flows near this beautiful town. Kaveri flow कर रही है Thanjavur के पास. One hears the bells of the Rajarajeshwara temple built by King Raj Chola. वहीं पर नदी बह रही है, वहीं पर Rajarajeshwara temple है which was built by Rajaraja Chola. The town people are all praised for its architect Kunjar Mallan Rajaraja Perunthacchan, who built the temple. He was the architect. और हमें इनके बारे में कैसे पता है? Because his name was proudly carved on the walls of the temple. So here you can see Thanjavur, being the capital city, was an administrative center, but at the same time it was a temple town also because it had this massive, beautiful Rajarajeshwara temple as well. More information. Just keep imagining, okay? More information. Inside is a massive Shivling. Besides the temple, there are palaces with mandapas or pavilions. Kings hold
court in these mandapas. इन्हीं मंडप में king अपनी conference रखते हैं. Okay, issuing orders to their subordinates. There are also barracks for the army. Barracks भी हैं वहाँ पे army के, where army stays. The town is bustling with markets selling grain, spices, cloth and jewelry. मतलब वो एक commercial center भी है, because it has a flourished market where people can sell and purchase things, right? Talking more about Thanjavur. Water supply for the town comes from wells and tanks, and this is the information I'm giving you. अभी भी आपका imagination का cloud चलते रहना चाहिए, okay? So think that there are wells and tanks also in the city. The Salia weavers of Thanjavur. Salia क्या है? There's a community of weavers. उनका नाम Salia है. The name of the community is Salia. The Salia weavers of Thanjavur and the nearby town of Urayur are busy producing cloth for flags to be used in the temple festival. They are also busy in fine cotton, finding out fine cotton for the king and nobility and coarse cotton for the masses. So here you can see the living condition. Weavers क्या कर रहे हैं? They are making cloth for the flags. और flags कहाँ use हो रहे हैं? Temple festival में. That means they have all these celebration and all these festivals and rituals and culture. Okay. Another important point. They are producing fine cotton cloth. That means good quality cotton cloth for the king and the nobility. But for the common masses, they are making coarse cotton. They are using coarse cotton for the common masses. Okay. That means the rich and the powerful is wearing a good cotton material, whereas the common mass is wearing a low quality material. Okay. Some distance away at Swami Malai, these sthapatis or sculptures are making exquisite bronze idols and tall ornamental bell metal lamps as well. That means there is a craft center also. And that is why Thanjavur is so much important, because as we read, it has river also. That means it is good for agricultural purposes, right? It has a temple also, a very massive temple, Rajrajeshwara temple. So it's a temple town also. Name of the architect is also given on the walls of the temple. There is a massive shivling in the temple. It has mandapas also, where the king held his conference, right? There is a enhanced market also, where people can sell grain, spices, cloth and jewelry. There is proper supply of water as well for the city. Then there are weavers also who are producing cloth for the festival as well as for the king, nobility and common masses. And then very important, there are sculptors also. That means Thanjavur is also a craft center. Okay. Based on this, I have a very important question for you, and very easy question also. Why do you think people regarded Thanjavur as a great town? Thanjavur इतना important क्यों था? First, it was the capital city of Chola Empire, right? Second, Thanjavur was a temple town with Rajrajeshwara temple in it, and people had a great faith in Shiva and this temple. It gave employment to a huge number of people because Thanjavur had an enhanced market as well, thus becoming a center of opportunities. Due to all these reasons, Thanjavur was regarded as a great town. आप इसमें और भी points add कर सकते हो, that it was also a craft center. This place was good for agricultural purposes as well, right? You can add all these points as well. Now I will tell you that why Thanjavur was also a temple town and a pilgrimage center. So basically I will be telling you what are temple towns and pilgrimage centers.
So reading about temple towns and pilgrimage centers, let's take example of Thanjavur only. As I told you, Thanjavur is also an example of temple town. वो केवल एक administrative center being the capital of Chola Empire नहीं है. It was also a temple town, as the very mighty Rajrajeshwara temple was there built during the reign of Rajaraja Chola. Correct? Temple towns are important because they represent a very important pattern of urbanization, the process by which cities develop. Now you will have a question कि किसी temple से city कैसे develop हो रही है? So whenever there is a temple, उसके periphery में people set up their market. And when there is market, there are employment opportunities. When there are employment opportunities, people settle there. वो लोग अपना वहाँ settlement बना लेते हैं. And this settlement leads to township and creation and development of city. Because now in that place, people will have all the facilities and infrastructure. So with the help of one big temple, the entire settlement takes place, and that is why temple towns represent a very important pattern of urbanization. Temples were often central to the economy and society also. Rulers built temples to demonstrate their devotion to various deities. उनका जिस भी भगवान पे विश्वास होता था, they used to build those kind of temples. For example, a person or a king believing in Shiva used to build Shiva temples. Just like Raj Chola. Raj Chola was a Shivaya. So he built a Shivaling temple. Okay. They also endowed, they as in the kings, they also endowed temples with grants of land. Land दे दिया जाता था, land tax free कर दिया जाता था for the temples. And along with the land grants, king also used to give money to carry out elaborate rituals, feed the pilgrims and priests, and celebrate festivals. Okay, king money देते थे. And why is the king giving money? So that people can perform rituals. The priest in the temple can perform rituals. People, whoever visit the temple, that means the pilgrims can be feeded well. उन्हें प्रसाद मिले, उन्हें भोजन मिले खाने को, right? They can be feeded well, and the priest can also be feeded well, and they also have money to celebrate festivals as well. इन सब चीजों के लिए who used to give the money? The king used to give the money. That is why temples were often central to the economic prospect also, as well as for the social aspect. Social aspect कैसे? If king will not give money, how will we have the elaborate rituals? How will we feed the pilgrims? How will we feed the priest? For all this, we need money. To feed the components of the society, you need money, and king used to give all this. Pilgrims who flocked to the temples also made donation. जो लोग pilgrim, जो लोग दूर दूर से आते थे मंदिर देखने के लिए, उसको visit करने के लिए, they also used to give some donation to the temple. The temple authorities used their wealth to finance trade and banking, and gradually a large number of priests, workers, artisans, traders, etc. settled near the temple to cater to its need and those of the pilgrim. क्या बताया मैंने? If people will have employment, they will settle over there to give all the facilities to the people, right? And this is what happened. धीरे धीरे priest, worker, artisan, trader सब वहीं रहने लग गए, so that they can cater to the needs of the pilgrim. Okay? Thus grew temple towns. Towns emerged around temples such as those of Villaswamy, जिन्हें हम भिलसा या विदिशा कहते हैं, which is in Madhya Pradesh, and Somnath, which is in Gujarat. Other important temple towns included Kanchipuram in Madurai, which is in Tamil Nadu, and Tirupati, which is in Andhra Pradesh. All these are very important and prominent temple towns because over here, with the help of a temple, the city developed. The idea of urbanization in these areas developed due to and with the help of a temple. Okay, that is why these temple towns and pilgrimage centers are very important for the pattern of urbanization and for the cities to develop. So apart from Thanjavur, I gave you some more examples as well, and that is of Villaswamy in Madhya Pradesh, Somnath in Gujarat, Kanchipuram and Madurai, these two towns in Tamil Nadu, and Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh. Okay. Talking more about these pilgrimage centers also slowly developed into township because of the facilities, the commercialization of that place. Vrindavan, which is in Uttar Pradesh, and Tiruvannamalai, which is in Tamil Nadu, are examples of two such towns. Ajmer, another example, Ajmer, which is in Rajasthan, was the capital of the Chauhan kings in the 12th century. And later it became the Suba headquarters under the Mughals. तो देखो, pilgrimage center था और बाद में administrative center बन गया, right? This is how it became a very important township for the Mughals. It provides an excellent example of religious coexistence. ये अजमेर की बात हो रही है यहाँ पे, that it provides an excellent example of religious coexistence because Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti, the celebrated Sufi saint who settled there in the 12th century, attracted devotees from all creeds. Okay, without any differentiation, people from all creeds visited him, and even after his death, people visited the grave of Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti. Okay, and even today people go over there. Near Ajmer is a lake known as Pushkar Lake, which has attracted pilgrims from ancient times. And these are all the places I'm telling you, these are all the examples I'm telling you, which were pilgrimage centers who slowly developed into township. Vrindavan, which is in Uttar Pradesh,
Tiruvannamalai, which is in Tamil Nadu, Ajmer, which is in Rajasthan. And then there is this lake also, which also became prominent, and around it एक township settle हो गया था, which is the Pushkar Lake. Okay. Now coming on to a very interesting topic. Okay, and I will tell you about bronze, bell metal, that means जो घंटा मंदिर में बजता है, and the lost wax technique. Okay, पहले तो ये जान लो what is bronze. So bronze is an alloy containing copper and tin. आप copper और tin को mix करते हो और आपको bronze मिल जाता है. Okay. Bell metal contains a greater proportion of tin than other kinds of bronze. By this I mean that bell metal is also a bronze, right? That means it will also have the combination of copper and tin. But in the bell metal, tin का substance ज़्यादा होता है, copper का कम होता है. Okay? Tin is more than copper. And that is why it has that ton आवाज. That is why this produces a bell-like sound. Okay? Now, coming on to Chola bronze statues. Chola bronze statues, which we saw in chapter 2 also, were made using the lost wax technique. अब ये क्या होती है भैया? Okay. So it's a very impressive technique I will tell you about. क्या किया जाता है? First an image was made of wax. पहले wax से एक image बना दी जाती है. Okay. This was then covered with clay and allowed to dry. पहले आपने wax से ये बना दिया. ये red ink is wax. ये wax से आपने बना दिया. Then what you do is you cover this wax statue with clay. You cover this wax statue with clay. Okay. And then you allow it to dry. Next, it was heated and a tiny hole was made in the clay cover. फिर इसको heat किया जाएगा. इस पूरी body को heat किया जाएगा. Okay. It will be heated up and then a tiny hole will be made anywhere. A very tiny hole anywhere. A tiny hole was made in the clay cover. Clay कौन सा था? ये green portion clay था, है ना? इसमें कहीं पे hole किया जाएगा. And then the molten wax was drained out through this hole. क्योंकि अभी heat किया गया था ना, तो देखो heat करने से क्या होगा? The clay will not melt. The clay will not melt, but the wax inside will melt. The wax inside will melt, correct? And by heating up and making a hole on the clay cover, the melted wax was taken out. Then molten metal was poured into the clay through the hole. और फिर क्या किया जाता था? मेटल लाया जाता था molten form में. मेटल लाया जाता था molten form में और इन्हीं होल्स के थ्रू वो molten metal इसके अंदर डाल दिया जाता था. A very difficult technique to do. You need to have very good skill and you have to be very proficient in your job to do this, because first you have to make the wax statue, cover it up with clay, make it dry. Then you have to heat that body. Then you have to make holes on that clay cover. You have to take out the molten wax and then you have to pour molten metal inside it. Then once the metal cooled and solidified, the clay cover was carefully removed and the image was cleaned and polished. इसके बाद भी खत्म नहीं हुआ है. You have poured the molten metal and then you will allow it to dry. After the metal will cool and solidify, you have to remove this clay. ये जो green color का clay है ना, इसको remove भी करना है. You will remove this clay also and then the entire statue will be prepared. Okay. Here is an image, a bronze statue of Krishna subduing the serpent demon Kaliya. ये lost wax technique से ही ये statue बनाया गया है कृष्ण जी का, जिसमें he is subduing the serpent demon known as Kaliya. Okay. Now there's a very important question for you. What do you think were the advantages of using this technique? क्या फायदा हो सकता है इस technique का? So the answer is very simple. I'm giving you a few points. The lost wax techniques had the following advantages. First, it was very quick way to make statues. थोड़ा quick है, ठीक है? सुनने में बहुत elaborate लग रहा है, but it is little quick to make the statues. Second, wax was a reusable material क्योंकि wax melt हो जाता है. And then you can collect that wax and then you can reuse that wax for making another statue, correct? Third point, statues of any desired shape could be produced quickly through this technique. किसी भी shape का statue बनाना हो, you can make statue of any shape with this technique. And fourth, the bronze statues were not at all hollow from inside. They were solidified and had long life क्योंकि उसके अंदर metal डाला गया है, molten metal डाला गया, which was solidified. and that is why it was a very strong statue. ऐसे कोई ऐसे clay का या ऐसे कोई weak statue नहीं था, right? That is why this loss technique was a very important technique for making statues, especially during the reign of the Chola dynasty.
Now there is a network of small towns. From the 8th century onwards, the subcontinent was dotted with several small towns. These probably emerged from large villages. They usually had a mandapika or a mandi of later times to which nearby villagers brought their produce to sell. Mandi होती है ना, there is a setup जहाँ पे सब लोग अपने products लेके आते हैं and then sell करते हैं, right? They also had market streets called hatta or hart of later times, lined with shops. होते हैं ना आज we country in our country we have so many hunar harts, right? That means this market street. So this is how the network of small towns, network of small markets started developing in the era of 8th to 18th century. Besides, there were streets for different kinds of artisans such as एक गली पोर्टर्स, एक गली में पूरे पोर्टर्स ही पोर्टर्स बैठे हैं, एक गली में ऑयल प्रेसर्स हैं. One street has sugar makers, toddy makers, smith, stone masons, etc. While some traders lived in the town, others traveled from town to town. Few traders were there who lived in the town only. Few traders were there who traveled from one town to another. Okay, they did the up down system every day. Many came from far and near to these towns to buy local articles and sell products of distant places like horses, salt, camphor, saffron, betel nuts, spices like pepper. Okay, people used to sell all these things also in these street markets. Usually, a Samant or in later times a Zamindar built a fortified palace in or near these towns ताकि वो उस चीज पे supervision रख सके. Okay, for the supervision only he made his house near the town only. They levied taxes on traders, artisans, and articles of trade, and sometimes donated the right to collect these taxes to local temples which had been built by themselves or maybe by rich merchants. Okay, देखो जमींदार का काम क्या है? टैक्स कलेक्ट करना. To collect the tax, they built their houses near the towns so that whenever market will be set up, जैसे ही मंडी लगेगी, जमींदार will go and collect the tax. Sometimes they donated their right to collect tax. Right to collect tax. कभी कभी अपना वो ये right टेम्पल के प्रीस्ट को दे देते थे कि आप मेरी तरफ से आप कलेक्ट कर लीजिएगा और फिर मंदिर के काम में लगा दीजिएगा. Like that. Okay. Few of the temples were built by themselves, that means by zamindar or maybe by rich merchants also. These rights, the right to collect the tax, were recorded in inscription that have survived to this day. हमें ये inscription से पता चलता है that zamindar had the right to collect the tax. We get this information from the inscription that zamindar used to donate his right to collect tax to the priest of the temple. Okay. See, here is an image of a city market and here is an image of a wood carver. Now let's talk about taxes on markets. Following is a summary from a 10th century inscription from Rajasthan, which lists the dues that were to be collected by temple authorities. There were taxes in kind. ठीक है, in kind, that means cash नहीं ले रहे हैं बल्कि उसके बदले में we are taking some object or anything, maybe an object, maybe any service or maybe anything. Okay. Sugar and jaggery, this was the tax. Dyes, thread, and cotton. On coconuts, salt, areca nuts, butter, sesame oil, on cloth. Besides, there were taxes on traders as well, on those who sold metal goods, on distillers, on oil, on cattle fodder, and on loads of grain. ये सारी चीजों पर टैक्स लगता था. Okay? Some of these taxes were collected in kind, while others were collected in cash. Okay? Find out more about present day taxes on markets, who collects these and how are they collected and what are they used for. So basically I told you the taxes which were used to be collected during the 10th century period of history, and we got the information from an inscription found in Rajasthan कि ये सारे products पे tax लगता था. Most of the taxes were collected in kind, few were collected in cash also. Now you have to tell me about the present day taxes. Who collect these taxes? How are they collected? And what are they used for? Okay. I have provided a very small clue based answer for this as well. The present day taxes on the markets are property tax, service tax, sales tax. You must have heard about income tax as well, right? Now, who collects them? Central or state government collect these taxes through revenue departments. कैसे collect होते हैं? They are collected in cash, right? The money thus collected is used for the welfare of the society. What purpose are they used for? Sorry, what purpose? They are used for the welfare of the society. Government collect the taxes and then use it for the welfare of the society with the help of various schemes and programs. Okay. Now reading about big traders and small traders in the town. There were many kind of traders. These included the Banjaras. Several traders, especially the horse traders, formed association with headmen who negotiated on their behalf with warriors who bought horses. क्या किया था? एक ऐसा एसोसिएशन बनानी थी और ये सब लोग ट्रेडर्स थे, ट्रेडिंग इन हॉर्सेस. इनका एक हेडमैन था who used to crack the deal for the business, okay, with the warriors who wanted horses. ये headman उनसे deal करता था. Since traders had to pass through many kingdoms and forests, they usually traveled in caravans as a group में and formed guilds to protect their interests. As an association बना लेते थे. You can say union बना लेते थे so that they can protect their own interest. There were several such guilds in South India from the 8th century onwards. The most famous being the Mani Gramam and Nanadesi. They are the association. They are the guild of traders. Okay? Mani Gramam and Nandesi. These guilds traded extensively both within the peninsular region of India and with Southeast Asia and China also. Okay? They had that much reach of their business and trade. There were also communities like the Chettiars. हम लोगों ने भी बंजारा के बारे में पढ़ा. Now the next community is Chettiars and the Marwadi Oswal, who went on to become the principal trading groups of the country. ये लोग ने इतना ट्रेड किया, they expanded so much their business that they became the leading trading group of the country. Gujarati traders included the communities of Hindu Banyas and Muslim Bohras, traded extensively with the ports of the Red Sea, Persian Gulf, East Africa, Southeast Asia, and China. Okay, and this is the third community we are reading, the Gujarati traders, including the people of Hindu Banyas, Muslim Bohras. They used to trade in the areas of Red Sea, Persian Gulf, East Africa, Southeast Asia, and China. So you can see there are small traders also who are trading within the country, and there are big traders also who are going up till European countries as well. Okay. Now what these traders sold? They sold textile and spices in these ports, and in exchange brought gold and ivory from Africa and spices, tin, Chinese blue pottery, silver from Southeast Asia and China. The towns on the west coast were home to Arab, Persian, Chinese, Jewish and Syrian Christian traders. West coast पे ज़्यादातर वही traders रहते थे. This is the western coast of India. This is the eastern coast of India. Sorry for the drawing. And on the western coast, most of the traders belong to the Arab, Persian, Chinese, Jewish and Syrian Christian. Okay. Indian spices and cloth sold in the Red Sea ports were purchased by Italian traders and eventually reached the European market. और हमारा वहीं से spices and cloth got famous. After which various European companies came to India to trade, and slowly and gradually British took control over India. Okay, Indian spices and cloths sold in the Red Sea ports, purchased by Italian traders, and eventually reached European markets, fetching very high profits. Spices grown in tropical climates, जैसे कि pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, dried ginger, etc., became an important part of European cooking, and cotton cloth was very attractive. This eventually drew European traders to India. उन्होंने बोला कि ये इन लोग के स्पाइसेस, इन लोग का कॉटन बहुत अच्छा है. We have to go to India to know the trade. Okay, we will shortly read about how this changed the face of trading in towns. जब यूरोपियन ट्रेडर्स इंडिया आ गए ना, everything changed in the history of the world, and we will read about it further. Okay, now children, let's read about Kabul. Why Kabul? Because in this chapter we are reading about the towns and traders, and Kabul was a very important trade center. With its rugged, mountainous landscape, Kabul, which is in present day Afghanistan, became politically and commercially important from the 16th century onwards. Kabul and Kandahar were linked to the celebrated Silk Route, the very famous Silk Route connecting the Asian and the European nations. Besides, trade in horses was primarily carried on through this route. In the 17th century, Jean Baptiste Tavernier, who was a diamond merchant, estimated that the horse trade at Kabul amounted to 30,000 rupees. In that point of time, 16th century में अगर कोई 30,000 खर्च कर रहा है, that was a very big deal. आज के करोड़ की वैल्यू से भी ज्यादा होगा ये 30,000 का वैल्यू, right? Camels carried dried fruits, dates, carpets, silk, and even silk, and even fresh fruits from Kabul to the subcontinent and elsewhere. Slaves were also brought here for sale, and that is why Kabul is an important trade center to read about. Now, after reading all these information about the towns, the traders, there's a question for you. As you can see, during this period, there was a great circulation of people and goods. What impact do you think this would have had on the lives of people in towns and villages? People इधर जा रहे हैं, goods इधर जा रहे हैं, सब लोग इधर. There's constant circulation of people and goods. What impact would it had on the lives of people in towns and villages? You have to make a list of artisans living in the towns as well. Okay, so the great circulation of people and goods must have had following impact on the lives of people living in towns and villages. For example, people in villages and towns must have felt that their lives have changed due to such a great circulation. They would have become busier than ever before. Their incomes must also have increased. Their time for the family would have reduced, and they would have begun giving more time to the commercial activities such as circulation of goods and people. The towns must have had the following artisans: blacksmith, goldsmith, wood carver, weaver, metal worker, and gardener, because we read about all of them till now. So, this was the answer, that what impact people might have because of the circulation of people and goods. Economy was circulating, economy was enhancing, and definitely it will have an impact on the lives of people. And this is what the question asked over here. Okay, children, now we will read about the crafts in town. हमने pilgrimage centers पढ़ लिया. We read about the administrative towns. We read about the commercial centers. Right? Now we will read about the craft in the town. Why these cities in between the 8th and 18th century famous for its craft. The craftspersons of Bidar were so famed for their inlay work in copper and silver that it came to be called Bidri. बिदार के लोग इनले का काम करते हैं. इनले का मतलब होता है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ देयर इज अ स्ट्रक्चर एंड देयर आर स्मॉल होल्स इन इट एंड यू हैव टू इनले, यू हैव टू पुट सिल्वर एंड कॉपर इन इट. ऐसे स्टड करना होता है. यू हैव टू स्टड द ऑब्जेक्ट with copper, silver, or anything. These people became so famous for their work that this work started getting called as Bidri work. The Panchals or Vishwakarma community, consisting of goldsmith, bronzesmith, blacksmith, masons, and carpenters, were essential to the building of temples. All these people, the community's name was Panchal or Vishwakarma community. जैसे वो सलिया community थी weavers की, वैसे ये गोल्डस्मिथ एंड ऑल दैट की वीवर क्राफ्ट्समैन की कम्युनिटी है पांचाल्स, और यू कैन से विश्वकर्मा कम्युनिटी. ऑल दीज पीपल डिड द जॉब ऑफ बीइंग गोल्डस्मिथ, ब्रॉन्जस्मिथ, ब्लैकस्मिथ, मेसन्स, कारपेंटर, एंड ऑल दीज पीपल वर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन बिल्डिंग द टेम्पल्स, क्योंकि पूरे टेम्पल में ऐसा काम होता था, राइट? ऑल दीज क्राफ्ट, ऑल दीज इनले वर्क वाज वेरी प्रोमिनेंट इन ऑल दीज टेम्पल्स, एंड हेंस
services of these people were also very important. They also played an important role in the construction of palaces, big buildings, tanks, and reservoirs. Similarly, weavers such as Salayar or Kaikolar emerged as prosperous community making donations to the temple. कुछ weavers इतने wealthy and prosperous हो गए थे that they started making donations to the temple. Apart from doing their jobs, they also had enough money to donate in construction of these temples. Some aspects of cloth making, like cotton cleaning, spinning, and dyeing, became specialized and independent craft. क्राफ्ट का मतलब यही नहीं है कि आपने पेपर फोल्ड कर लिया या कुछ पेंट कर दिया. नो, clearing the cotton, spinning it, dyeing it, all these activities are also considered as craft. Making shawls, making some creative idea, making some creative apparel out of cloth was also considered as a craft. Here is an image of a shawl border which shows the craft and creativity of people. And here is a 17th century candle stand made up of brass. और इस brass में देखो black overlay किया गया है, देख रहे हो? The brass has black overlay. So these were the kind of craft activities which made various towns and cities famous between the 8th to 18th century, leading the country's name in the most prominent craft culture. Okay, and don't be confused कि ये बिदार कहाँ पर है. Here is Bidar. Okay, you can see near Golconda, Bidar. Okay, this was the center which became so famous for its bidri work of copper and silver inlay.
Now I will explain that how the fortunes of towns changed. कैसे कोई एक town which was very valuable declined in its value. Okay, so some towns like Ahmedabad, which is in Gujarat, went on to become major commercial cities, but others like Thanjavur shrank in size and importance over the centuries. अभी हम लोगों ने पढ़ा था that Thanjavur was a temple town, was a commercial center, was an administrative town nearly in the 8th to 10th century, right? But later over centuries, Thanjavur shrank in its size, in its territorial size as well as in its value. Whereas there were few towns which rose to major commercial city status, such as Ahmedabad. Talking more about such examples, Murshidabad, which is in West Bengal, on the banks of Bhagirathi River, which rose to prominence as a center for silk. Murshidabad was a very famous center for silk. A lot of trade used to happen from Murshidabad because of the silk quality it produced. And it became the capital of Bengal also in the year 1704. So it was an administrative center as well. It was an important trade and commercial center, and it was an administrative center as well. But its value also declined in the course of the century as the weavers faced competition from cheap mill-made cloth from England. And I told you, European traders started coming to India, and then since then the history of India changed. Employment status reduced, production level reduced, competition got very heavy, right? Everything changed on a very vast scale, especially for the artisans, especially for the craft persons. They lost their employment opportunities because of the cheap product. Cheap quality नहीं कह रही हूँ, but the price of such products were cheap because they were made by machines. Any machine made thing is cheaper than any handmade thing, right? So the quality being made by weavers were a little expensive, whereas product made by the machinery was cheaper, and that is why people starting buying clothes from England rather than from the weavers of India. And this is how Murshidabad also lost its value for silk. Here is Ahmedabad in the state of Gujarat. Even in modern Gujarat also, Ahmedabad is in Gujarat. And here is Murshidabad on the bank of river Bhagirathi in Bengal, which reduced its value. The production of silk declined in Murshidabad because the weavers faced heavy competition from the mill-made cloth from England. क्योंकि वो cheap था और जो weavers बना रहे थे वो expensive था. That is why they lost their employment opportunities. And here Thanjavur, you already saw Thanjavur. Okay, Thanjavur, here where the Kaveri flows. Okay, students, so with this, we have come to the end of part 1 of lesson number 6. Happy learning, revise well. Thank you. We will see you in the next part.